I know this isn't enough, but it's all I have. This, after everything, it's nothing.
Take it back. We don't want it.
Please.
My brother died 5 years ago. Every month, I sent my parents $250 to pay off his debt. I struggled, but I kept paying because I believed it was the right thing to do. Then one day, my neighbor pulled me aside and said, "Stop sending the money and check the security camera." The next morning, I reviewed the footage, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Let me take you through it all. I was standing in my parents' cramped living room, holding an envelope with $250 cash inside, money I'd pulled from my daughter's winter coat fund because it was the only place left to take from that month. My mother sat on the couch, arms crossed, staring at the television like I wasn't even there. My father was in the kitchen, coughing into a handkerchief, the same rehearsed cough he'd been performing for 5 years. "Here," I said, setting the envelope on the coffee table between us. My mother didn't look at me. She just reached out with one hand, pulled the envelope toward her, and tucked it into her purse without a word. No thank you, no acknowledgement, not even eye contact. I stood there for a moment longer, waiting for something, anything that resembled warmth or gratitude or even basic human decency. But there was nothing, just the low hum of the television and the rustle of my father's newspaper. So I left. That's how it had been every single month since my brother died. Or since I thought he died. If you've ever lost someone suddenly, you know that grief doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in waves. Some days you're fine, functional even, moving through the world, like a person who knows how to exist. And then other days, you're standing in the cereal aisle at the grocery store, staring at the brand your brother used to eat, and you can't breathe. Daniel had been my older brother by 3 years. Growing up, he was the golden child, charming, reckless, always getting into trouble, but somehow always getting out of it too. I was the responsible one, the one who cleaned up his messes, the one who apologized to our parents when he disappeared for days at a time. When he died, or when I thought he died, it was sudden. A car accident, they said. Closed casket funeral. My parents were devastated, or at least they seemed to be. My mother wept into a lace handkerchief. My father gave a eulogy that sounded rehearsed but still broke my heart. And then, 2 weeks after the funeral, they told me about the debt. Daniel owed us money, my father said, his voice flat and businesslike. A lot of money. He borrowed from us over the years. Rent, medical bills, bad investments. We kept track. My mother nodded, dabbing at her eyes. "We didn't want to burden you with this, but we're struggling. Your father's health, you know. And my pension barely covers the rent." They handed me a ledger, handwritten, pages and pages of dates and amounts, stretching back years. The total at the bottom, $15,000. I stared at the number, my throat tightening. $15,000. It might as well have been $1 million. "I can't," I started, but my mother cut me off. "He was your brother," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "We raised him. We raised you. This is the least you can do to honor his memory." So I agreed, because what else was I supposed to do? Refuse? Let my parents suffer? Let my brother's legacy be one of debt and shame? I started sending them $250 every month. It didn't matter that I was a single mother raising a 6-year-old daughter on a teacher's salary. It didn't matter that some months I had to choose between groceries and electricity. It didn't matter that I was drowning. Because family is family, right? The first 3 years were the hardest. My daughter, Emma, was too young to understand why we couldn't go on field trips with her class or why her birthday parties were always small, quiet affairs at home instead of the trampoline parks and bowling alleys her friends went to. She never complained, though. She was a good kid. Too good. The kind of good that makes you ache because you know she deserves better. I worked overtime whenever I could. I sold things. My engagement ring from a marriage that had ended badly. My grandmother's china. The car I'd bought myself as a graduation present. Piece by piece, I dismantled my life to keep my promise. And my parents? They barely acknowledged it. Every month I'd bring them the money, and every month they'd take it without a word. No gratitude, no updates on their supposed financial struggles, no warmth. I told myself it was grief, that they were still mourning Daniel, and maybe they blame me somehow for not being the one who died instead. I told myself a lot of things to make it hurt less, but it didn't work. Everything changed on a Wednesday in October. I was coming home from work, arms full of grocery bags, when my neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, stopped me in the hallway. She was an older woman, probably in her 70s, with sharp eyes and a habit of knowing everyone's business before they did. "Rebecca," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I need to talk to you." I set the bags down, confused. "Is everything okay?" She glanced around, as if checking to make sure no one else was listening. "It's about your parents." My stomach dropped. "Are they okay? Did something happen?" "Not exactly," she said slowly. "But I've been seeing things, late at night. A man, going into their apartment." I blinked. "A man?" "Yes, always around midnight. He wears a hood, keeps his head down. But Rebecca," she hesitated, her expression troubled, "he walks with a limp, the same kind of limp your brother had." The world tilted. I tried to laugh it off, tried to tell her she was mistaken, that Daniel had been dead for 5 years, that this was impossible. But the look on her face stopped me. "There's a new security camera in the stairwell," she said quietly. "Building management installed it last month. You should check the footage." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, turning Mrs. Kowalski's words over and over in my mind like a puzzle I couldn't solve. A man with a limp, sneaking into my parents' apartment at midnight. It was absurd, impossible. My brother was dead. I'd been to his funeral. I had seen the urn with his ashes sitting on my parents' mantel. And yet, the next morning, I called the building manager and asked for access to the security footage. He was reluctant at first, citing privacy concerns, but I was persistent. I told him I was worried about my elderly parents, that I'd heard reports of suspicious activity, that I just wanted to make sure they were safe. Finally, he agreed. I sat in his cramped office, watching the grainy black and white footage on his desktop computer. He fast-forwarded through hours of empty hallway. And then, "There," he said, pausing the video. I leaned closer, my heart pounding. A figure appeared in the frame. Male, average height, wearing a dark hoodie pulled low over his face. And yes, there it was, the limp. A slight drag of the right leg, exactly the way Daniel used to walk after he'd injured his knee playing basketball in high school. The man climbed the stairs slowly, carefully, and stopped in front of my parents' door. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and let himself in. Like he lived there. I watched the footage 3 more times, my hands shaking, my mind racing. It couldn't be Daniel. It couldn't be. But the limp, the build, the way he moved, it was all so familiar it made my chest ache. "Do you want me to report this to the police?" the manager asked. "No," I said quickly. "Not yet. Let me handle this." I started watching. Not obviously, not in a way that would tip anyone off, but I paid attention. I started visiting my parents at different times, unannounced, watching for signs of anything unusual. And once I knew what to look for, I saw them everywhere. The trash bags in the hallway outside their apartment, always taken out late at night, always stuffed with pizza boxes and beer cans. My parents claimed they were too sick and too poor to eat anything but rice and canned soup, but someone was ordering takeout. The neighbors mentioning strange noises, footsteps, muffled voices, the sound of a television playing action movies at 2 in the morning. My parents had always been early to bed types. They used to complain if I called after 8 p.m. And then there was the money. I'd been sending them $250 a month for 5 years. That was $15,000 total, the exact amount they'd said Daniel owed them. But when I casually asked my mother about their finances one afternoon, mentioning that I might be able to send extra that month, she brushed me off. "Oh, we're managing," she said vaguely. "Your father's pension came through. We're fine." Pension. The word stuck in my mind. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I used an old password I knew my father used for everything and logged into their bank account online. What I found made me sick. Their account wasn't empty. It wasn't even close. My father's pension had been depositing automatically for years, and it was substantial, more than enough to cover rent, food, and medical bills with plenty left over. The account balance was over $40,000. They weren't struggling. They never had been. They'd been living on cash. My cash. I confronted them the next day. I walked into their apartment without knocking, my hands shaking with rage, and found my mother in the kitchen chopping vegetables like it was any other afternoon. "Where's the money going?" I demanded. She looked up, startled. "What?" "The money I've been sending you. Where's it going?" "Because it's not going toward rent or bills. Your account is full. So where is it going?" My mother's face went pale. She set down the knife, her hands trembling. "Rebecca, I don't know what button you're talking about. Don't lie to me." My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded. "I've been bleeding myself dry for 5 years, and you've been sitting on thousands of dollars this whole time. So either you tell me the truth, or I'm going to the police." "The police?" My father's voice came from the doorway. He stood there, arms crossed, his expression cold. "And tell them what, exactly? That you've been generously helping your parents? That's not a crime, Rebecca." "Fraud is," I shot back. "Lying about debt, taking money under false pretenses, that is a crime." We stared at each other, the air between us crackling with tension. And then my mother spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "It was for Daniel." The room went silent. "What?" I said, my voice hollow. "The money," she said, not meeting my eyes. "It was for Daniel. He needed it." The floor dropped out from under me. "Daniel is dead," I said slowly, each word like pulling teeth. "Daniel has been dead for 5 years." My mother said nothing. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face, her shoulders shaking. And that's when I knew. I went to the mantel. The urn sat there, polished and gleaming. The one I'd helped pick out at the funeral home. The one I'd believed held my brother's ashes for 5 years. I picked it up, my hands trembling. "Put that down," my father said sharply. I ignored him. I unscrewed the lid, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. And then I looked inside. Stones. Smooth, gray stones, the kind you'd find at any riverbed or garden center. No ashes, no remains, just rocks. I dropped the urn. It hit the floor with a crash, stones scattering across the hardwood like shrapnel. My mother let out a sob. My father said nothing. "He's alive," I whispered. "Isn't he?" Silence. "Isn't he?" My mother nodded, her face buried in her hands. And just like that, 5 years of grief, 5 years of sacrifice, 5 years of drowning, all of it collapsed into a single, searing point of rage. I didn't go home that night. I sat in my car outside their building, shaking, crying, trying to make sense of what I'd just learned. Daniel was alive. My parents had been lying to me for 5 years. They'd taken my money, my time, my life, and fed it to a ghost. But why? I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start. Marcus Chen had been Daniel's best friend since high school. They'd been inseparable growing up. Partners in crime, my mother used to say, though she'd always said it fondly back then. If anyone knew where Daniel was, it would be Marcus. I found him at the auto shop where he worked, elbow deep in an engine, grease smeared across his forearms. When he saw me walking toward him, his face went carefully blank. "Rebecca," he said, straightening up. "Long time." "Where is he?" I said, skipping the pleasantries. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, not meeting my eyes. "Who?" "Don't." My voice was steady, cold. "I know he's alive, Marcus. I know he's been hiding, and I know you know where." He was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. "You shouldn't be looking for him." "Why not?" "Because he doesn't want to be found." "I don't care what he wants," I snapped. "He owes me 5 years of my life. He owes my daughter the childhood she didn't get because I was paying his fake debt. So, you're going to tell me where he is? Or I swear to God, Marcus, I will make your life a living hell." Marcus studied me, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed me the screen. An address on the outskirts of the city, in an industrial area I'd never been to. He's been staying there, Marcus said quietly. But Rebecca, don't do anything stupid. I took a photo of the address and left without another word. The warehouse was exactly the kind of place you'd expect someone to hide if they were faking their own death. Crumbling brick, broken windows, graffiti-covered walls. I parked across the street and sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. What was I going to say to him? What do you say to someone who's been dead to you for 5 years? I didn't have an answer, but I got out of the car anyway. The side door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The warehouse was mostly empty, except for a makeshift living area in the corner, a mattress on the floor, a camping stove, a pile of clothes. And sitting on the mattress, scrolling through his phone, was my brother, Daniel, alive. He looked older, thinner. His hair was longer, greasy, pulled back in a ponytail. But it was him. Unmistakably him. He looked up when I walked in, and for a moment his face went completely blank. Then he smiled. Hey, Becca. I don't remember crossing the room. I don't remember raising my hand. But I remember the sound of my palm connecting with his face, the sharp crack echoing through the warehouse. Daniel recoiled, his hand flying to his cheek. Jesus. 5 years, I said, my voice shaking. 5 years, Daniel. Do you have any idea what you put me through? He stood up slowly, rubbing his jaw. I can explain. Explain? Explain what? That you faked your own death? That you've been hiding here while I bled myself dry, paying off your fake debt? That you let me believe you were dead? I didn't have a choice, he shouted, his voice cracking. I was drowning. Becca, I owed people money. Bad people. If I didn't disappear, they were going to kill me. So you let me do it instead, I said bitterly. You let me drown so you could save yourself. I didn't ask Mom and Dad to take your money, he protested. That was their idea. I just needed a place to lay low until things cooled down. And you've been laying low for 5 years? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Living on my money, eating pizza and drinking beer while I couldn't afford to buy my daughter new shoes? He flinched. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't want to know? Silence. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and hit record. What are you doing? Daniel asked warily. Tell me the truth, I said. All of it. Why you faked your death, how you convinced Mom and Dad to help, where the money went, everything. Becca, tell me, or I'm calling the police right now and reporting you for fraud. He stared at me, his jaw working. Then he sighed and sat back down on the mattress. And he told me everything. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes for him to lay out the whole sick, twisted plan. How he'd gotten into debt with a loan shark over a gambling problem. How he'd panicked and staged the car accident using a stolen vehicle and a body from a medical cadaver program that a friend had access to. How he'd convinced our parents to go along with it by promising to pay them back once he got on his feet. And the money I sent? I asked, my voice hollow. Most of it went to me, he admitted, to keep me afloat, pay for food, rent on this place. Some of it they kept. And when were you planning to tell me the truth? He didn't answer. Let me guess, I said bitterly. You weren't. You were just going to keep bleeding me dry until there was nothing left. That's not... He stopped himself, running a hand through his hair. I was going to disappear again. Once the debt was paid off. Start over somewhere else. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Not my brother, not the boy I'd grown up with, the one I'd protected and covered for and loved despite everything. Just a coward. I stopped the recording and saved it to the cloud. What are you going to do? Daniel asked quietly. I stood up, slipping my phone back into my pocket. I'm going to take back my life. I went to a lawyer first. I brought everything. The security, footage, the recording, the fake urn, bank statements showing my payments, and my parents' account balance. I laid it all out on her desk and waited. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Huang, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and let out a low whistle. "This is fraud," she said. "Textbook fraud. And depending on how we frame it, possibly identity theft and conspiracy." "Can I get my money back?" I asked. "Absolutely. We'll file a civil suit against your parents and your brother for the full amount, plus damages. And we'll report this to the police. What they did is criminal." "How long will it take?" She hesitated. "Cases like this can take months, sometimes years, but with the evidence you have, I'd say you've got a strong shot." "Do it," I said. The police were less sympathetic than I'd hoped, but they took the case seriously once they saw the evidence. Daniel was arrested 3 days later, still hiding in the warehouse. My parents were arrested the following week. The charges: fraud, conspiracy, and theft by deception. The arraignment was surreal. I sat in the gallery watching my parents and my brother stand before a judge in handcuffs and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a cold, empty relief. They pled not guilty, of course, but it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial took 6 months. 6 months of depositions and court dates and sleepless nights. 6 months of facing my parents across a courtroom, watching them refuse to meet my eyes. 6 months of Daniel's lawyer trying to paint him as a victim, someone who'd made a mistake out of desperation. But the jury didn't buy it. They found all 3 of them guilty on all counts. Daniel was sentenced to 3 years in prison. My parents, because of their age and lack of prior criminal history, got probation and were ordered to pay restitution. I got my money back. Every cent. It's been a year since the trial ended. Emma is 12 now, thriving in school, finally able to do the things her friends do without me having to scrimp and save. We took a vacation last summer, our first real vacation, to the beach. She collected seashells and built sandcastles and laughed in a way I hadn't heard in years. I haven't spoken to my parents since the sentencing. I don't plan to. Daniel writes me letters from prison sometimes. I don't read them. Some people might say I should forgive them. That family is family, no matter what. That holding on to anger will only hurt me in the end. But here's the thing they don't understand. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about me. And I don't need to forgive them to move on. The truth set me free. Not vengeance, not rage, just the simple, undeniable truth. And sometimes that's enough. If you've ever felt trapped by obligation, by guilt, by the weight of what you think you owe to people who don't deserve it, I want you to know something. You don't have to carry that weight. You don't have to drown to keep someone else afloat. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. The truth might hurt. It might tear your life apart. It might cost you everything you thought you knew. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. And freedom, I've learned, is worth fighting for. I still think about the urn sometimes, the one filled with stones. It sits in a box in my closet now, a reminder of the lie I lived for 5 years. Some days I think about throwing it away. Other days I think about keeping it forever, a monument to my own survival. But mostly, I don't think about it at all, because I'm too busy living.